It's episode 3 of the ROI for XR with your friends XR at work. Dane, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you, Scott?
I'm good. That's a loaded question. We were just talking about what a crazy day it is and a
Yes.
crazy week, but we're going to do it, man. Here's episode 3. Everybody, if you've not watched episode 1 or 2 of this series, I would encourage you to do so. We'll post to those in the comments here. Back in episode 1 a couple of weeks ago, we talked about specifically how to keep machines running longer, how to reduce downtime, how to decrease the amount of recovery time in manufacturing using extended reality tactics. In episode 2, we talked about specifically realizing ROI through the use of XR as it relates to safety and enterprise health and safety. So, 2 good episodes. Check those out. Today, we're going to talk about how extended reality can play a part in realizing some ROI, and that looks like a couple of different things we want to share about in use cases maybe that aren't on the factory floor specifically, or they're not directly tied to health and safety. But Dane, tell us, kick us off. Tell us how you're using XR to make or save some money in your day job.
Yeah, so I think it's one of the better applications, I guess, for like VR, for instance, and a like a white collar setting, in the office.
Mm-hmm.
I think is soft skills training. So for example, like leading through uncertainty. I think there's a lot of like hiring practices, right? Like there's many companies that hire for culture, and so being able to have conversations with a fake a fake app
Avatar.
avatar or somebody who's applied to a role. Right. So I think that's a really interesting use case, and I think there's a couple ways that you could potentially measure that. I think one is the kind of quality of your applicants, right? So if you can more quickly get through the cycle of kind of understanding who's really fit for the job and who's not, obviously that cuts down on the overall cycle of the whole recruiting process. It actually gets that person doing the job faster. And so I think that's a big piece of this is calculate kind of what the kind of value of a role would be. And if you were able to cut that down from a month and a half recruiting time to a couple weeks, there's a lot of value in being able to get people into roles they can fill faster. Obviously, there's a lot of other skill sets as well that you can talk about when it comes to soft skills training. So diversity and inclusion. Like I said, leading through uncertainties, an interesting one. We've certainly had some uncertain times of late, and so I think that's an important, I guess, kind of cultural, I guess, training that you could do for folks. So, I guess, are you guys thinking about this in the same way, Scott, as far as how you guys are measuring success there?
Yeah, we look at the same way. Anytime you can take something that typically takes X amount of time and reduce that through the use of remote interviewing or virtual reality collaboration in VR, reducing travel time, you start to get into it's soft ROI. It's not necessarily something you can just pinpoint an exact amount of dollars and cents that you saved, but that 2 things happen through your example, right? Number one, if you can reduce that amount of that cycle time for hiring someone, well, it's someone gets productive faster, hired and onboarded and trained faster time to productivity. That's important in what we do, right? Mm-hmm. And it also sets us apart as hopefully as an employer of choice. Again, it's tough to quantify that, but I know you guys have factories in markets where there's a lot of competition for factory workers. And this has got to be something that hopefully sets your employer and my employer apart from others in these busy markets where maybe we get to be an employer of choice and get a better selection of more tech savvy talent, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I think there's kind of a, so for instance, imagine that you take a VR headset to like a job fair or something. Number one, like everybody's going to want to go and
Oh
put
yeah.
the headset on, right? So there's a draw to the table, overall. I think the other aspect though is that people get a good feel for like, for instance, if you put them through a training, for the role that they would be
Hmm.
filling,
Hmm.
they get a good feel for what that role looks like, and so they have the opportunity to understand, does this actually make sense for me to apply to, or should I be, thinking about applying for a different role or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of a filtering mechanism as well for, people who are potentially looking at roles. And then, from the company side, you actually get to see how people perform, in a new setting, whether or not they interact well with technology, all those different things. And so I think it's a really good and fun tool, right, for people who are kind of in the process of recruiting or being recruited, from
Right.
a business.
We've had some instances lately, Dane, where a member of our team has gone out with the headsets to a recruiting fair, job fair, or most recently out to. We went out with one of our customers out to a booth that they did, where a bunch of vendors were set up, and because we had the devices,
Mhm.
we got a lot more traction, got a lot more
Yeah.
interest. You tend to be the one that, once you bring out these headsets, people start flocking to that, right? And it's tough to, again, necessarily quantify that, but um, it gets you more traction, and you're going to get better candidates. You're going to get the more tech savvy candidates. You're going to have more a bigger field to choose from, as opposed to having to go in and grab them and beg them to come look
Mhm.
at your 3-ring binder of job recs, at your booth. So,
Yeah.
and I think you bring up a good point. This deal as well. We talk about this about being able to kind of pre-qualify someone in VR at a job fair, at a recruiting fair. Yes, to get them familiar with what it is they're applying for, but also for the employers, we can take a look and see, okay, they say that they are a level whatever at driving forklifts. Here, put this on. Let's see how you
Absolutely.
do, and so you can kind
Mhm.
of hopefully make better hires, reduce some risk in hiring, which downstream, it nets into better retention, right?
Mhm.
And so there's ROI to be had there.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it is important to call out, just so we're not painting it with kind of rose-colored glasses here. You
Oh,
do
it's
have
just
to,
that easy. Yeah, it's just
yeah,
that
yeah.
easy.
I mean, you do have to be careful around like some of the compliance stuff for hiring. Like,
Yeah,
you know, like you don't want to exclude somebody based on how they performed in VR. Like there's
yeah.
some ramifications that you have to be careful of. But I think overall, it's a net benefit to the experience of the recruit, the person being recruited as well as the recruiter. And I don't know about you, but a lot of conversations that I've had with folks who put on the headset who weren't necessarily working for my company was, hey, this is really exciting what you guys are doing. Like I have an Oculus at home. I play Beat Saber on the weekend, and
I
so
do.
yeah, the fact that you guys are
Yeah,
using this new technology is really really exciting. And so I think there's a new demographic of people who are kind of native, users, if you will, to this technology, and so the expectation is that it's there.
right, right. Yeah, I think it is good stuff. Anytime you can set yourself apart, you can connect with the younger audience that you're hiring. It's a good thing. Are you guys doing any? I think another use case for virtual reality, right, is virtual collaboration. Being able
Mhm.
to have people in the workforce who live in separate cities or states or countries to be able to go in and collaborate in a visual, audible, physical way in virtual reality. Are you guys doing any of this? I mean, we've just started dipping our toe in this, but I mean, are you seeing any benefits from this if you are?
Yeah. Well, so I think there's kind of two use cases that are similar in that area. One, I think, is what you're talking about. Like, can we all virtually get together and share whatever the new product is and be able
Hmm.
to do product reviews or
Yeah.
talk about different features. So that's certainly, I think, one of them. I think another, which actually I think you guys probably do more of that. So I'll hand that one back to you here in a
A little bit.
second.
Yeah.
But the other one is like, you're not necessarily collaborating, but like if you're traveling, the ability to have access to your desktop and kind of your like desk area. So you can be sitting in the airport or sitting in your hotel or sitting wherever and be able to have kind of your desk set up. So as many monitors as you want, all those different things. I think it's a tough thing to be able to analyze from like an ROI perspective, because it's, but I mean, the question is like, how do we justify ROI on having more than one monitor at work? Like, most people have more than one monitor.
Right.
And so I don't think it's so much a conversation of, there's $1 million ROI on like you having 3 monitors instead of one. But I mean, certainly from a retention perspective, like, if people feel like they have access to technology that, makes them comfortable and changes the way that they work, I think that that's a huge benefit.
Right.
But I want to go back to that topic, because I know that you guys, do some work around like being able to work with customers on, 3D assets. So I'd be interested, from your perspective, do you guys see this as a big opportunity?
Yeah. So the ability to ship a headset to somebody like a customer, or have them go online or use a tablet for AR to view a design prototype for a physical object, be it something small or big. Especially if it's something big, we've done a lot of this, and it's been very helpful. If you've seen me speak on any webinar or podcast, I tend to always talk about this because it's been very productive for us, and it's had really positive results and ROI tied to it. We manufacture, like a lot of people listening, we manufacture things that are very large, right? And so shipping a first prototype of something that's 15 foot tall by 40 foot wide to a customer, what happens is they come out, they look at it on the truck, they call us and say, yeah, it's the wrong, that color's not what I thought it was going to be, or there's too much glass, we want more metal, or blah, 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 whatever customers may say. The ability for us to forego shipping something out across states or across the country to look at, and just doing it in VR, or letting them look at it in AR on a tablet in their in a retail location or something, that saves us on shipping. It saves us on iteration time between revisions, and it also helps us cut down, in some cases, the number of iterations we do. And when these prototypes are running anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 each, if we can take something that typically takes 4 iterations and cut it down to 3, we just saved a lot of money, a lot more than a VR headset costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we do a fair amount of that, you're right. And so this is another example, like we're talking about today, where it's how we engage and interact with our customers. And it hopefully puts us in a position with our customers to where we are seen as, and we are actually a more forward-thinking, technologically advanced provider of theirs when they're looking at us compared to maybe some other more nimble companies in our space. And so we've seen a lot of benefit from it. There's some real hard quantifiable costs that it saves, less shipping, faster production time. But then there's some soft stuff as well. A lot of these things, when we talk about XR ROI in enterprise, we start moving from some real tangible, overall equipment efficiency numbers and metrics into, it's tough to kind of quantify that, but it's helping, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is. We get that feedback.
It's interesting too to think about like what does when this technology becomes more pervasive, right? So, instead of having to ship a headset to your customer, they just have a headset that they use, anyway. To me, the whole concept of the metaverse, right, which has been kind of dragged through the mud, and it's been up and down and all that stuff over the last
misused,
year and a half or 2 years. I think that's one of the best value props probably for the quote unquote metaverse is, hey, like, just join us in this room and be able to walk around. And so, the cost of this kind of experience even goes down over time, which is, hey, I don't have to ship you a headset. There's no like worry about how do we manage that headset, like none of that stuff. Hey, here's a link. Just join me in this room and let's go walk around together.
Right. Right.
So I think this gets easier over time too, which is good. And especially, for anybody who's, watching who either has already started or, is looking at getting started, I think this is a good indicator. And I think there'll be more and more use cases that come
Right.
out over time in that space.
Hey, so let me ask you this. We talked several times on this podcast about the benefit of remote expert calls, right? Two people connecting, video, audio. One guy's in a, is in a headset in a factory. Someone else is at home on a laptop, and
Mm-hmm.
I need on the factory floor to call someone at home and have them see through my cameras and help me fix something. But we see cases for a remote expert even outside of the factory, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we've done remote expert calls where an IT guy in a server room, he needs help from someone to be able to show him, where things go on a rack, or to assess, power distribution and this sorts of things, and the setup of the cabling. What about remote expert? Obviously, it reduces travel time and increases
Mm-hmm.
efficiency. But are you guys using it outside of the factory in any way?
Yes, I mean we have applications like for instance when we go and do like audits of
Hmm.
suppliers,
Yeah.
for our teams, we actually will go and send somebody along so that they can kind of walk around the facility and be able to show other people in the team as well. You don't have to send a whole team of people, together. And in some cases, you can just put the headset on the person that's already at the facility, and they can do kind of like a walkthrough without
Yeah.
needing anybody, to be there. So that's
Right.
obviously like a pretty big cost savings. Um, we're seeing things like wayfinding applications like in
Yeah.
an office. So we've built an internal application where you hold your phone up, it recognizes where you're at, in the space, you can navigate around. That's really, it's funny, I use it on a consistent basis because the numbering system for our like meeting rooms and stuff is kind of funky, and there's quite a few of them. And so there's sometimes where it's just like, I don't know where this meeting room is, hold your phone up, navigate there. And
Yeah.
so obviously that was designed for the plant, but it's also something that can be used, within our kind of corporate facility as well. And
Mm.
so, we were moving buildings, because we spent a bunch of money to redo our building, and we had new pieces of furniture and stuff. Like there was like a kind of a design for an atrium that we wanted to share with people.
Mm.
And so the cool thing is we put it on a website, made it available, and people could take out their phone and kind of see like, hey, this is what your desk setup's going to look like, do you have any concerns? And so we actually used it to get feedback on what the space was going to be like, and how we designed it before it was even kind of fully
Yeah.
complete,
Yeah.
which is really cool because people end up happier afterwards because they kind of understand what's coming, can ask for different things that they maybe wouldn't have thought about if they weren't able to see, for instance, like, can I have this desk be a little bit wider, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was really interesting too.
So, hey, let me ask you this. I mean, something that came to mind. I can never remember if you and I were on this call together, or if I was on with someone else. But we've got a friend Annie who runs an agency here in Atlanta, and she did a pretty neat thing where a large hospital was building a new campus, and
Mhm.
they took the Annie took the campus and put it into virtual reality and allowed you to do a virtual walkthrough, kind of fly through and walk through the entire hospital campus. I mean, all the grounds and the gardens and the parking area and the recreation area. And what they did was, I thought this was brilliant, was they allowed their sponsor people who are responsible for raising sponsors for their new facility. They gave them this ability to show, hey, so brand XYZ or charitable foundation, if you were to sponsor this
Oh, that's
ward
cool.
or this wing in this new hospital, we've gone ahead and put your name and your branding and stuff in here. So this is what the Coca-Cola wing of this hospital, this children's hospital, would look like with
Mhm.
your branding and stuff. And so they're able to use virtual reality to show future state of what your brand sponsorship of a part of this campus might look like. I thought that was brilliant. I know it raised a lot of money before the proverbial all right, because what do sponsors say? Well, when you get it built, we'll come out and take a look and see what it is we're sponsoring. But this gave the ability to kind of preload some of those sponsorship sales and get that interest ahead of time. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
there's some
awesome.
neat stuff out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, we don't do this like in my space as much, but like I've heard of doing like accessibility walkthroughs as well for
Ah,
like hospitals and things like that. People who
yeah.
are in
How would that
wheelchairs.
work?
Yeah, so people are in wheelchairs. You have them go through the facility and you say like, hey, based on what you're seeing, do you feel like this is helpful to you? And so
Hmm,
they can actually see like, hey, if I was going to roll through this doorway, this seems pretty tight, for me.
yeah.
If I was going to, try and roll through there, or hey, that light switch is too high, up
Yeah.
on the wall, and
Yeah.
so I need it to be a little
Hmm,
bit lower. And
yeah.
so that's an interesting kind of audit, perspective as well. Is
Right.
you can put people in a space that doesn't exist yet, and you avoid all of the rework and all the other things that happen as a result of of not being able to see it before it's built.
Well, it's a lot cheaper and easier to change things in VR than in physical space once the facility's built, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, I would say that when we think about ROI for XR in these enterprise use cases, there's a ton of these things, right? There's a lot of ways that you can use your imagination and you can talk to your stakeholders and find ways to communicate things through the use of virtual and augmented reality,
Mhm.
to save time, reduce labor, pull risk out of there, maybe pre-sell some opportunities. It just seems like there's just plenty of opportunities to use XR in even in manufacturing, the businesses that you and I are in,
Mhm.
outside of those plants, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I always kind of think of this as like the second wave, right? Like generally, at least in the business that I'm in, like the first wave is, hey, we need to teach people who are working the machines, how to operate
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if we're not operating, then if we're not efficient there, then like we're not making money, right? So like that's always the number one priority. And generally, I think for like businesses getting into this space, that's the first priority, is that kind of operator based training. But the cool thing is, once you have all of your headsets deployed and people are using them for operations training, it's just another application that you push to the headset, and all of a sudden you can do public speaking. All of a sudden, you like all these different kind of soft skills that have been kind of challenging or difficult to train to in the past. And so I think of it as like a second wave,
Yeah.
to the first wave of kind of operator based training.
Well, I would say, Dane, and I hope you'd agree, and I hope that our community would agree that when you look at realizing quantifiable value through the use of XR, that there's a lot of opportunities across factories, applied to health and safety, being able to collaborate remotely, simulate some things, right, to be able to do things in an enterprise situation. It just seemed like there's a lot of opportunity, and this is not something. XR is not something that's, you hear, is it ready for manufacturing? I would say, dude, it was ready years ago, right? Are we ready for it? Because there's a ton of ways to use this.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that's important to recognize is, there's a lot of low hanging fruit to your
Yeah,
point right now. Pick the low hanging fruit, and then the technology is going to continue to develop. And
yeah,
so, it's not like there's a perfect time to jump in, to this space. It's more of like, what can you do today that's valuable for the business? And then as compute gets better, as haptics get better, as all these different
yeah,
things evolve in the ecosystem, new use cases emerge which create new value for the business. And so I think really, what we're doing is kind of front running, maybe
yeah.
the point where the technology gets perfect, and focus on like, how can this be useful today, and then grow with it.
Right, right. Well, I'm excited for the future. I hope that our community will drop your comments in here if there's ways that you're using XR to realize value in your business, healthcare, entertainment, manufacturing, oil and gas, automotive, whatever the case may be. Give us your comments. We've enjoyed doing these three parts of this series, and we hope everyone's enjoyed listening to it. And certainly, we're going to probably after these three, I say we take a break for a week or two, Dane. But
Sounds good.
we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We've got some guests that we're talking to about coming in and sharing some really cool stuff with with the X Artwork community. So we hope to see everyone soon, and we hope that this has been a valuable series. Any other parting words? Any words of wisdom from your side of the podcast?
No, I mean, as always, we appreciate you guys watching, and also, if you haven't subscribed to YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube
Yeah.
channel, as well as the podcast is available on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
I think we're at on YouTube. We have 199 subscribers this
There
morning.
you go.
Hopefully,
Push
this
us over.
pushes up to 200, man.
That's right. That's right.
Let's have a party. All right.
Sounds good.
Good. We'll see
Thanks,
you next
Scott.
time, buddy.
Yep. Take care.